The crisis in Ukraine may be fading from the headlines, but it's far from over. And some members of Congress say the Obama administration has been far too weak in its response to Vladimir Putin.
Other international leaders worry that Russia may soon invade eastern Ukraine. George Thomas has more on this perilous situation.
This map shows the extent of the pro-Russian demonstrations, and they are spreading across eastern Ukraine. The United States is accusing Russia of fueling the protests to justify a possible military intervention.
It is clear that Russian special forces and agents have been the catalyst behind the chaos.
Tens of thousands of Russian troops are less than 20 miles from the border. NATO says any intervention would be a historic mistake. One top NATO general predicts it would take the Russians 3 to 5 days to carry out an invasion. Meanwhile, hundreds of masked men with metal rods and Molotov cocktails remain in full control of the main government building in Donetsk, demanding closer ties with Russia.
The next step is we are going to announce a referendum that is going to take place between now and at the latest May 11th.
Like Crimea, the south and eastern parts of Ukraine hold a significant majority of ethnic Russians. Many of them would like nothing better than to be part of Russia's orbit.
Moscow is considering passing a law that would make it easier for Russian foreigners living in former Russian or USSR territories to get Russian citizenship.
The U.S. says additional sanctions on Russia's energy, banking, and mining sectors could be next if Moscow does not back down. Some lawmakers, including Arizona Senator John McCain, want Washington to send military aid to Ukraine. In a statement, McCain wrote, "By withholding military assistance, the administration may think it is reducing the risk of further conflict. In fact, the opposite may be true. The decision will appear to Putin as yet another sign of weakness, which may only invite further aggression." Meanwhile, lawmakers in Ukraine's weak transitional government are struggling to cope with the unfolding crisis. They broke out into violent fistfights late Tuesday as members of parliament were debating how to deal with the Russian threat. George Thomas, CBN News.
Well, it's all playing into Putin's hands. We're just showing weakness. It's just terrible. The greatest country on earth has leadership that is just weak. And we saw in the news today another shocking development. The Obama administration has decided to cut back on 2 legs of our nuclear triad. We have land-based missiles, which are in silos and relatively vulnerable. Then we have airborne nuclear weapons, and we also have sea-based weapons. The thought would be we're going to reduce the airborne and also seaborne. How is that telling Putin that we're going to be strong? What are we doing about it? As I've said before, people say, what's the answer? We could put a chokehold on his economy in a matter of days if we tried to do it, but we're not doing it. And I've also said, and I say again, we've got to be careful with our rhetoric, because if we just go blowing our horn, it may be a provocation severe enough so he'll decide he wants to go nuclear, and he's got quite an arsenal. So we're in a bind with a leadership that just doesn't understand the magnitude of these things. That's what happens when you put a community organizer in charge of the greatest nation on earth. No experience in foreign policy, no experience in business, no experience in running a large bureaucracy, and all he knows how to do is organize protests. And he's good at that. And he's also good at speaking, and he's good at mobilizing people on the internet. He's great at that. But this other thing, our country is at risk. Well, another country in Europe is facing an economic crisis, and that's the country of France. And now they have a radical idea of how to fix their problem. They're going to cut taxes in France. John Jessup has that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. John.
Pat, that's right. France's new prime minister is promising deep tax cuts for French businesses and households. Manuel Valles's plan is an effort to jumpstart the country's weak economy with unemployment hovering around 10%. He's also promising to cut the budget and bureaucracy. Valls says the recent elections show that France has too much suffering and not enough hope. CBN's Dale Hurd has reported on how the wealthy and young have been fleeing France. You can find his story at cbnnews.com. While taxes may be coming down in France, the cost of health care is up here in the U.S. Premiums for insurance have been rising sharply, according to a survey of insurance brokers by Morgan Stanley analysts. They say the increases are largely due to changes from Obamacare. Some states were hit harder than others. For individual insurance, the average increase in Delaware has been 100%. In New Hampshire, 90%, Indiana, 54%, and California, 53%. Forbes reports the latest increases come after previous rate hike in 2013. Pat?
We were promised something, you remember? Don't any of them keep their words. It's just terrible. We promise you your health care premiums will go down. We promise you if you like your doctor, you can keep them. We promise you if you like your health plan, you can keep it. None of those things are true. And now the chickens are coming home to roost, and man, they are expensive. Wow. John.
Pat, it's no secret that conservatives don't like President Obama's policies, but Louisiana's Republican governor says they have to do more than criticize. They have to come up with ideas of their own. David Brody has the story.
Bobby Jindal isn't shy when calling out his own party.
As a party, we can't just be the party of no.
Or criticizing candidates whose comments make Republicans look insensitive.
We've got to stop being the stupid party.
As part of an attempt to rebrand the GOP, Jindal can be seen this week teaming with Jeb Bush in a project called New Republican as the party tries to attract new voters. Jindal's biggest splash, however, could be that he's viewed as a one-man idea factory.
We need to win the war of ideas, not only because I think it's the path forward to us being a majority, a governing party, but also, secondly, if we really think these issues are so important for America, if we think we're at a critical tipping point, we owe it to have that discussion with the American people.
And the ideas are flying. As a former health official and congressman, Jindal has made a career out of studying political policies and strategies. Besides his role as governor, he's created the conservative organization called America Next. Its tagline, winning the war of ideas. Jindal used America Next to spell out his version of health care reform. Among the headlines, health savings accounts and $100 billion for states creating laboratories of democracy on health care.
Let's make health care more portable so when you lose your job, you don't lose your coverage. Let's also make sure that we can help individuals form voluntary purchasing pools to be able to afford health care. There are real policies that will drive down the cost that don't involve the government taking over health care.
Jindal talks fast, and it can be tough to keep up with all his points, ranging from energy production to school choice programs.
Let's trust parents to make those decisions. So let's let the dollars follow the child instead of making the child follow the dollars. We trust parents to be the first and best educators of their children.
School choice is a hit in Louisiana. He's also privatized at a lower cost many jobs that used to be run by the state. And possibly more impressive is that his fiscal approach of cutting programs and government waste has meant balanced budgets. It all adds up to speculation that he's gearing up to run for president in 2016.
We've got one liberal party already in the Democratic Party. We don't need two. Now, yeah, we need to appeal to all sorts of folks and show them that conservative principles will work for them. But I don't think we need to become a second liberal party.
And Jindal may be taking that message national in a presidential run in the near future. David Brody, CBN News, Washington.
And you can see more of David's interviews with top political leaders on the Brody File at cbnnews.com. Commissioners in one Maryland county say they'll reluctantly obey a federal judge's order barring them from starting public meetings with Christian prayers. A judge ordered Carroll County officials to stop opening with prayers in the name of Jesus. Some commissioners have routinely prayed to Jesus when it was their turn to ask for divine guidance over board proceedings. The commissioners voted Tuesday to use only non-sectarian prayers for now. The resolution runs through August 1st, when they hope the Supreme Court will have ruled on a similar dispute in New York State. Well, a growing number of mothers are staying at home full-time to raise their kids. That's a conclusion from a new study by the Pew Research Center, which says 29% of mothers did not work outside the home in 2012. That's up from a low. That's up from a low of 23% at the turn of the century. And 2/3 of at-home mothers had working husbands. Around half of them had at least one child age 5 or younger, but more of at-home mothers were living in poverty compared to working mothers. Junk food can not only make you fat, it might make you lazy as well. That's the finding from researchers at UCLA. They compared lab rats who ate a diet of unprocessed foods like fish, while another group ate highly processed foods with sugar and fat. Not only did the junk food rats noticeably gain weight, they took longer rest breaks and gave up on their tasks much more quickly. Researchers say the diet may either lead to fatigue or obesity, which itself causes fatigue. And Pat, the results also suggest that it's the long-term eating of junk food, not short-term, that actually leads to obesity.
Well, what do you know? We've been saying this forever and ever.
The rats gave up on their tasks. What important tasks did the rats have?
Well, I mean, they got to run around a maze over and over and over again, and they got to stop doing it. But in truth, ladies and gentlemen, if you eat sugar and you eat that kind of stuff, it will cause your body to slow down, and you don't feel energy. You feel fatigue, and that. You think you're getting a kick because you take a shot of caffeine or a shot of this, that, and the other, and especially carbohydrates processed, but it will lead to fatigue, and that's what this study shows.
You'll go crashing down. Feels great for a few minutes, and then you crash.
Hey, by the way, our president, we checked the White House website. That speech he made to the United Nations is still on the White House website, where he said the future does not belong to those who blaspheme the prophet of Islam. And that includes every Christian who says that Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life. And so what our president is saying is the future does not belong to the Christians, it belongs to the Muslims. That is the official word in the United Nations speech by the President of the United States. That's what he said. And we checked there, our staff checked to make sure that thing is still up there, because they could pull it down and say, well, he really didn't say that. But it's still up. It was on the website as of today, the White House website. You can check it for yourself, the speech he made to the United Nations. Well, I told you we have come on a book here that's published by The Truth, at least it's written by The Truth, a group of scholars who speak Arabic, scholars of Islam, Islamic thought, and here is a booklet that is loaded with quotes from the Prophet, from Muhammad, in the Quran, also the Hadith, and it's a historical presentation of who he was, where he came from, and what he did in life. It's a beautiful little booklet, and we'll give it to you. We've had 6,500 people so far have requested this.
Wow, people really want to understand.
Of course they do. This is gorgeous, and it's so readable, and it's fabulous.
Yeah.
And you know, you have friends that say, well, Islam says this and Islam says the other. This is what it says, because this is carefully vetted by Islamic scholars. And it is absolutely gorgeous. Isn't it pretty?
And yesterday we were talking about the scriptures in there from the Quran that clearly show it's not a religion of peace.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And once the Muslims gain control, and that's what it says in here, once you get control, then you destroy those who are the infidels, and that includes the Christians, the Jews, the polytheists, whoever they happen to be. You kill them and you cut their heads off. It says there, you know, behead them in battle. It's the quotes direct from the Quran. I mean, don't give me this. When George Bush came out and said it's a religion of peace, he didn't know what he's talking about. And if the President of the United States does know what he's talking about, it is scary, dangerous. You need to get this, and we'll give it to you free for right now. I think there'd probably be multiple copies for churches and religious organizations. We've got to figure some way of getting paid a little bit for this, because it's not, you don't print them for free, but it's beautiful color, and it's available. It's called Islam, Religion of Peace or War. Call in 1-800-759-0700, and we'll give you a copy. We'll send it to you. That's right nice, isn't it?
It's right nice.
Right nice.
You sound like a country gentleman. It's right.
Country gentleman, right nice.
Kindly nice.
Voters are flocking to the polls in large numbers in India. For the next 5 weeks, Indian voters will cast ballots to decide which party will control their federal government. So far, polls show the opposition BJP party may win, but will fall short of the majority needed to control parliament. That would pave the way for a BJP-led coalition. Dr. Sajan George, president of the Global Council of India Christians, says the BJP's return to power may not bode well for minorities and Christians. George says the U.S. government will be on the wrong side if it supports a new Indian government that does not protect religious freedom. Former sports broadcaster Craig James has joined the Family Research Council. James says he'll use his new position to fight the, quote, religious bigotry that he believes led to his termination from Fox Sports. He was let go after expressing opposition to gay marriage in his run for U.S. Senate in Texas 2 years ago. Fox called him a polarizing figure who abused a previous on-air position to further a personal agenda. James will serve as an assistant to FRC President Tony Perkins. Well, you can always get the latest from CBN News by going to our website at cbnnews.com.